budget is what defines our economy. A budget is what defines where Canada's economy will move forward. So, Mr. Speaker, on this budget put forward by the Liberal government, my colleagues on this side have highlighted in very great detail what is wrong with their Liberal bill. Well, let me start by saying certain things, Mr. Speaker. I have been sitting here and listening to the Liberals when they get up, and they like to attack us, calling Mr. Harper's name all the time. They have used Mr. Harper's name more than anybody I've ever heard from, Mr. Speaker. Somehow it is in their psychic that the former Prime Minister is should be used to highlight their deficiency, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me just show by facts why they are wrong. The International Institute of Management Development puts together a yearly world competitiveness ranking. Mr. Speaker, within 1 year, Canada has fallen 3 spots out of the world competitiveness ranking, from 10 in 2018 and 13, Mr. Speaker. The lowest in the G7 countries. 2018 to 2019, they were in power. I repeat, the Liberals were in power. And we fell down from 10 to 13. Let me say this, Mr. Speaker. In the same report previously, from 2007 to 2015, Canada grew from the 10th place to the 5th place under the Conservative government of Prime Minister Harper.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker. Let me repeat that for the Liberals who speak from their points. I'll repeat it again, Mr. Speaker. Under their regime, we lost ranking from 10 to 13, the lowest ever in the G7 country. Wow. Yet, during the same period when we were in power, Mr. Speaker, which is 2007 to 2015, we grew from 10th place to 5th place under Harper. This is something that they should take into account, Mr. Speaker, every time they talk about their. You know, when it comes to economic performance or government efficiency or business efficiency or infrastructure, the Institute says we are not the top 5 countries in this index, Mr. Speaker. This is, Mr. Speaker, terrible management. The business investment, Mr. Speaker, in Canada during their regime, Mr. Speaker, had fallen by annualized rate of 10.9%. This is the second time it has fallen over 10%. What a shame. This is the management record of this government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is because this government seems totally oblivious to the economic conditions. I come from Alberta, Mr. Speaker. We have seen the devastating impact that this government has done to my province, Mr. Speaker.
Here, here.
In my city of Calgary, Mr. Speaker, downtown is completely empty, Mr. Speaker. Right now, businesses that are on the suburban area are suffering from tax hikes because downtown, which used to be the core economic sector in Calgary, is half the buildings are empty. That's when they came in power, Mr. Speaker. They have the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to fix that. But let's talk, even if they bought the Trans-Canada Mountain Pipeline, and even if they start the construction, Mr. Speaker, what about Bill C-69, and what about the tanker bill, Mr. Speaker, C-48? Mr. Speaker, that is the direct attack on Alberta, Mr. Speaker. And the Albertans are now reeling from this disastrous management of this government, Mr. Speaker. I can say this, Mr. Speaker, when the father of our current Prime Minister was there, that was the first time Alberta was also suffering. I was there during that period of time, Mr. Speaker, when they tried to seize the oil royalties over there, Mr. Speaker, under the finance minister called Mark Lalonde, Mr. Speaker. It was a disastrous result, Mr. Speaker. Since then, the Liberals have never recovered in Alberta, Mr. Speaker. And now, when during the election 2015, this current Prime Minister says, I will do business differently than my father in Alberta. Well, lo and behold, those sunny days are gone, Mr. Speaker. This one, he again has not fulfilled his thing. Mr. Speaker, I am talking about Alberta, the energy sector. But you know what, Mr. Speaker, the energy sector is the one that benefits the whole country. Okay? It is not only Alberta-centered. British Columbia, Mr. Speaker, Quebec, Ontario, everybody, the Maritimes, Mr. Speaker. It is one of our key sectors. But what is very important, Mr. Speaker, is that our companies have spent billions and billions of dollars for clean technology. I will give you one example, Mr. Speaker. One example. I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee in the opposition. At that time, in Sudan, Mr. Speaker, in the oil fields of Sudan, Talisman, a Canadian company, had a percentage in the operation of Talisman in Sudan, Mr. Speaker. Lo and behold, all of these NGOs that are based in Western Canada found out that it was easy to target Canadian companies. And so they went after the Canadian company, accusing it of all kind of crimes being committed against environment, blah. Ultimate result, Talisman sold its share
China.
To who? China. To India. Okay. And the next day, Mr. Speaker, all protests were over. Has oil stopped? No. Yeah. Right? Who were the target? Canadian. Why were they target? There's an easy way to it, Mr. Speaker. By these so-called, well, I won't say so-called, but these environmentalists, you know. And, you know, Mr. Speaker, all of a sudden, bing, they have disappeared, Mr. Speaker. So what does it show? You know, what does it show? It shows that, Mr. Speaker, you know, the targets, well, they are doing it right now, Mr. Speaker, of these environmentalists. For 2 minutes? Oh, okay, I'll stop here for, okay, I want to go on the other issue, which is the media outlet that these guys are giving money to. I am stunned. I can tell you why it is going to be a problem. What about the ethnic media? It's a huge number of ethnic media in the country. Are they going to give money to the ethnic media, or are they only going to give money to the old Canadian media that is sitting here on the national listing, on the national scene? Are they the only one who are going to benefit? Why? Mr. Speaker, everybody is a Canadian citizen. This is a slippery road. I will accuse them of discrimination if they don't give it to the ethnic media, Mr. Speaker. And who sits on that thing? A guy who is absolutely anti-conservative. He yesterday, the day before yesterday, said, I have a right to speak freely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. We in the conservative movement, Mr. Speaker, no. The Labour Party, their politics. He's absolutely right. He can speak. But he's not going to sit on an independent panel and decide which media is going to get money, Mr. Speaker. That goes against democracy. That goes against the principle of democracy. And it puts all journalists, Mr. Speaker, under a cloud. These journalists better wake up that they are going to be under a cloud. Can we trust them? Because they are getting money from the government, Mr. Speaker. You know, when anytime anybody else gets money, they are always opposing them, Mr. Speaker. Now, how can I believe that these journalists are writing which is unbiased, Mr. Speaker? All indications are. So this government is using the money they have, Mr. Speaker. The money they have to buy votes, Mr. Speaker, to buy publicity, Mr. Speaker. And it is a slippery road. Best not to get involved, Mr. Speaker, because the whole country has a media, Mr. Speaker. So it is easier for them not to do that. So shall I conclude, Mr. Speaker? In my conclusion, Mr. Speaker, let me say quite clearly